Hello, friends. I am Vitaly Portnikov. Donald Trump is once again accusing Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and former US President Joseph Biden of allowing the war between Russia and Ukraine because they did a terrible job. This statement by Trump, which can be seen on social media, is a continuation of his interview with a journalist aboard the presidential plane when the US president managed to respond to questions about the Russian attack on Sumy. It was obvious that Trump did not particularly like this topic, and he began to convince the journalists, firstly, that it was a mistake by the Russian leadership, and secondly, that the war between Russia and Ukraine is not his war because he has only recently been in the White House, and when he was president, there was no such war. And if he had remained president, it would not have started. Quite the classic statements from Trump that we have all gotten used to. But along with this, one must realize for what purpose. Now, Trump is accusing Zelensky and Biden and is convincing everyone that the war between Russia and Ukraine is not his war, because there are no real results from the perspective of a ceasefire on the Russian-Ukrainian front, as well as on all other issues that the American president deals with. After his inauguration, no results have been achieved, and such a conclusion, evidently, Trump himself was forced to make after another trip by his special representative Steve Witkoff to St. Petersburg, where he once again met with the Russian president. The fact that after this meeting, neither in Washington nor in Moscow, there were any statements regarding these negotiations, that it can lead us to a simple conclusion. There were no real results. The meeting between Witkoff and Putin ended as it was expected to end, as all previous conversations between American and Russian officials ended, as the phone calls between Trump and Putin ended. A fiasco. The Russian president does not agree with the American proposals regarding the possibility of a ceasefire on the Russian-Ukrainian front, even for 90 days. And continuing negotiations with Putin amidst military actions, that is, amidst such horrific Russian crimes as the strike on Sumy, becomes dangerous for Trump's own reputation. And the American president understands this perfectly well. That's why he's furious, because nothing else remains for this deal maker in his life and in his presidential quarters. And there's one more additional quite important point, Michael, which is related to what's on board the plane. Trump only mentioned Biden in connection with the theme of not his own war, and on social media he also mentioned Zelensky. This may be related to the interview of the Ukrainian president with the television company SBS, during which Zelensky invited the US President Donald Trump and the Vice President of this country, Jay Divens, to visit Ukraine to see for themselves what is really happening in the Russian-Ukrainian confrontation. Jay Divens, the Ukrainian president, accused of speaking with the voice of Russian propaganda, and said that the situation is absolutely clear, that it is known who attacked and who is defending, who is the aggressor and who is the victim, and everyone knows this perfectly well. Of course, such rhetoric from the Ukrainian president is incredibly disliked by both Trump and Pence, who are trying to appear as mediators in the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. And they do not wish to mention who the real aggressor is in the war that Putin started against our country. And this may be related to not only with the financial interests of the American president, but also with the complete absence of the values of the democratic world in Donald Trump's arsenal, and in his understanding of what global politics is. After all, we know how the American president admires authoritarian leaders and dictatorial regimes. After this interview with Volodymyr Zelensky, and also after the NBC channel showed a report about Greenland and emphasized that the residents of this autonomous territory within Denmark are not in a hurry to agree to the idea of joining the USA, Trump even proposed to deprive the TV channel of its friend Putin in the best traditions license. And the fact that the president made such remarks and promised to sue the channel, although nothing extravagant or special, and even more so, defamatory in the television news of the channel, speaks primarily to how toxic for Donald Trump become the topics that he recently considered winning in his foreign policy. So, Trump does not know how to end the Russian-Ukrainian war and how to convince Putin to at least agree to a truce on the Russian-Ukrainian front. He never knew this, even when he made his bold statements about ending it. This war in 24 or 48 hours, the end of the Russian-Ukrainian war existed only in Trump's mind. And, of course, it was supported by his staff, who had long understood that to be close to the American president, one must support any nonsense he came up with in order to exist in a comfortable world, play golf, and unveil his own monuments at his own residence. The same applies to Greenland. Trump obviously does not understand how to annex this territory through real war with a violation of international law norms. He is not willing to start, well, at least not yet. And there are no real tools to convince the Greenlanders that they should change their status to that of an American state. Donald Trump also lacks such tools. The fact that people can value freedom, independence, identity, all of this again, such things do not exist in the vocabulary of a professional developer, which is incomprehensible to anyone. And he himself primarily decided that he understands something about world politics, and this illusion was supported by his astonishing electorate, which is now beginning to realize the mess he got into after the last US presidential elections. They have only just begun to realize. I think that Americans cannot even imagine the depth of the failures they will encounter in the coming years, and from which they will not emerge in terms of the long and difficult consequences of this administration. Decades, but this is about America. As for the Russian-Ukrainian war, no accusations from Trump against Zelensky, and even more so Biden, that they did not do the right job, of course, do not remove responsibility from the main culprit of this war, Russian President Putin. About him, the US president, when talking about a war that is not his own, for reasons unclear to us, somehow does not mention. Let's try to understand why is that. Thank you, friends. Stay on this channel, subscribe to it, follow my social media, and the channels on Patreon, BMI, Ko-Fi, and Donald that help develop these resources. Use the sponsorship feature on YouTube.